r/AskReddit by AskReddit. What was your ass so that's how it works moment? For years I wondered why that bit on the end of tape measures was always wobbly. Like why couldn't any manufacturers just use decent rivets? It pissed me off, so I smacked mine with a hammer to stop it wobbling. It's supposed to wobble. It's to allow for the thickness of that end hook depending on whether you are measuring an inside or outside edge. I facepalmed so fucking hard when I overheard that in the office years later. Northern Lights. I never understood what they were until I read about how, since the magnetic field is closer to the earth near the poles, it doesn't shield the atmosphere from plasma as well, so it burns off at a lower, respectively, altitude. That's also why it makes that buzzing noise. I always wondered why McDonald's McFlurries came with those thick, hollow spoons. Turns out the spoon clips into the mixing machine and acts as the mixing paddle to blend the ice cream and candy together. Was taking a product design class with a bunch of engineering students. We had a group assignment to redesign that little staple remover thing, the thing that clamps down, and you used to play with it as a kid like it was a mouth. Anyway, in my early 20s I realized that my proposed redesign was to remove the staple by first bending the staple corners up before pulling out the staple so it wouldn't destroy the paper. I realized in my mid-20s that I had been using that ducking thing entirely wrong for years and had been destroying paper by ripping the staple out from the front first instead of using the tool properly and starting from the backside. I felt good though because the other 4 people in my team also had been using it wrong for years. I'm gonna feel stupid I'm sure, but the first time I jumped into a pool and had let most of the air out of my lungs at like age 17 and sunk to the bottom, I had that moment. And it's been great understanding basic physics that I should have picked up on forever ago, and it's super helpful when I'm in water now. How most jobs are just a chain of simple steps. I had been working at my job for a few years. I slowly became the guy who knew everything and trained everyone. Eventually we had to do a redesign to handle more volume and higher output. So I redesign our processes and workstation layouts. This leads to me having to write up SOPs on everything I've updated. I'm in the middle of writing them up and it clicks. Even for the harder processes. It's just a longer amount of basic steps. I think I already knew it, I just never thought about it. Now whenever something new or challenging comes up, I'll just break it down into easier to manage steps. Made my work way easier thinking of it that way. Cutting a bite of steak against the grain before eating it. My mom told me years ago that if meat was too hard to cut using a butter knife, that I should cut the meat with the grain. I never understood why you got the hawking big knife with the big wooden handle at restaurants when you ordered steak. Then, someone told me to cut against the grain so that I would be chewing with the grain. Total game changer. My boss told me he couldn't match a competitor's offer as it would put me out of parity to my coworkers, so it wouldn't be fair. He asked me to think about it for 24 hours and to consider all the benefits I would lose when leaving the company. The next day, I explained that this wasn't a problem my new company faced, so I would be leaving in 2 weeks. He quickly matched the other company's offer to the letter. All that BS about fairness and parity was BS, and I was actually disappointed to learn. AHH. Capitalism. So that's how that works. An electrical generator. The electrons in the wire are almost like water in a pipe, and the spinning electric field created by spinning a magnet around it is like a pump that begins pushing the electrons through the wire. Please. This is just how I think of it. Smart people out there, please correct me if I'm completely wrong or should be thinking about this differently. I'm a biologist, so my job is literally learning how things work and then learning how those things work. Probably the coolest aha moment though was learning developmental biology. All of your cells are the same exact cell. It's the genes that get turned on that make it unique. Your brain cells at one point had the capacity to be liver cells, but where they were in space and time during development, turned on super specific genes that told the cell you're becoming this. It's also why, even though gene regulation can seem boring, to me at least, it's really one of the most fascinating and important concepts being studied. Not my aha moment, but I recently explained in another Reddit thread how candles work. Basically, the flame melts the wax, which is then drawn up the wick through a form of capillary action. As the liquid wax gets closer and closer to the flame, it eventually gets hot enough that it vaporizes. Being a hydrocarbon, the wax itself is flammable, and so the wax vapor combusts. So many people, when I explained that, had this moment where they suddenly realized how the wick doesn't just burn away to nothing, and where the magically disappearing wax goes. I thought it was common knowledge that the wax acts to fuel the flame, but apparently not.